Today on Faces of Florence, we feature Brock Page. Brock shares a bit about his ministry here in Florence and lets us in on a recent development for the Page family. This father of five shares about the big step of faith he is taking as he follows the call on his life.
Hey, welcome. We're so glad you found us. Radio Free is a 24-hour Christian mixed radio station broadcasting right here out of Florence, South Carolina. So when you're driving around town, remember to tune it in to 92.5. And if you're outside of the Florence area, you can listen 24 hours a day at radiofree.cc.
So Brock Page.
Hey there.
Good friend of Radio Free for a long time. I've had the pleasure of getting to know you personally some, and as we start this conversation, this video series, basically the idea is we were just discussing to just get to know, to let the Florence community get to know you a little bit as well. And let's just jump right into the real deal, because when I talked to you recently about doing this, you got a big life change happening right now.
Right.
So for people who don't know who you are, introduce yourself and what your role previously was.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Well, hi everybody. My name is Brock Page. I am a husband of Gretchen Page, father of 5 awesome kids, ages 16 down to 6.
5. Did you catch that? 5. 5 kids. Okay. All right. Keep going.
And so I have been we've been in Florence, my wife and I, our family, for about 11 years. But the past 6 years, I've been employed at First Presbyterian Church on Cherokee as their director of youth ministry, and have thoroughly enjoyed that. It was actually my first full-time ministry job. Previous to that, as I shared with you, biology is that was my major from college, and everything I've been involved with, every job since college up to that point, was something related to science.
Okay.
And so that was my first full-time ministry job. So it was jumping into the waters pretty quickly, deep water pretty quickly. But the reason I did that is I felt just God had been working on me for a number of years, working in my heart, drawing me towards ministry. And that was finally like, take the plunge. And there was a great opportunity that came up at First Pres. So I did that, and I love youth. I love ministry to all ages, really.
Yeah.
But I had really been involved for a while in a volunteer standpoint with children's ministry. Up to that point, any church we were at, Gretchen and I, we were involved with children's ministry. Well, I kind of was at a point where I was kind of anxious to jump to older kids.
Why?
So,
just out of curiosity.
Well, just because, there's only so much feedback and response you get from younger kids.
Yeah.
And I was looking for, I'm at the point where I want to start to get some more in-depth processing and feedback from the people I'm teaching.
Sounds like some science talking there. Yeah.
And so, and I had done adult, like Sunday schools and things like that, so adult ministry as well. And I was actually in college involved in a great ministry, campus outreach with college students. So I had quite a variety, but I really hadn't done the youth age very much, that teenage youth age. And some people probably hear that and think, oh, no.
Don't do it. Don't. Turn away. Go back to science.
But I don't know. God's just created me in such a way that, at least I think, that I'm compatible with teenagers. I don't get stressed out greatly. I don't get... not to say that I don't ever get stressed out, but,
it takes a special kind of person.
Yeah, it takes a kind of, in a lot of ways, I think, a laid-back personality to be able to kind of manage that. And I was willing to do that and kind of ready to take a step to the next level as far as what I taught and was able to teach and feedback. So this was a perfect kind of opportunity to jump into full-time ministry. And so for the past 6 years, that's what I've done with First Pres, and had some additional roles.
I was going to
through
say,
that. Yeah.
First Pres is a really interesting body to me. A lot of stuff going on over there, and just from my observation, you definitely leading the youth, but you're doing a lot more over there.
Right.
And I think it's because of opportunities have presented themselves, and so it's been interesting to watch you operate over there. But that's all coming to an end.
Right. So 2 years ago, I started taking seminary courses, just at kind of really to start to test the waters as far as what down the line would look like, and kind of logically, if you feel like the call is to full-time ministry, then you have to kind of think, well, long term, what do I want to do? Where's God leading me? And so, upon the encouragement of, at the time, an interim pastor at First Pres, we were in between pastors. Previous pastor I retired, the one that was there when I got there, and we had a couple of interims. And this interim, his name's Bill Kane, phenomenal guy, love him. Just he and I really clicked and hit it off. Well, he encouraged me to start taking seminary courses. And I said, well, I'm okay. I'm not anxious to get back and taking classes. But he kind of presented it like, you certainly need to be looking toward the future and what's God calling you to, and if it's youth ministry for as the career, the calling for the rest of the time, that's fine. But you probably want to still test that with the seminary. I mean, you don't necessarily have to have seminary training to be a youth director. Though in some places, you're a youth pastor, and that requirements usually some type of seminary training. So he said, just start, get your feet wet, and see how you like it. So I did, and I didn't hate it.
Interesting.
So I enjoyed taking the classes. I always thought I would probably enjoy seminary, but it was always like, oh man, I'm not ready to put more on my plate or jump back into school and study.
You're a reader.
Exams, right.
You just do that by nature,
yeah,
right?
Right. I do, and I'm not the most like that way academic person where I just soak up all this material like that. I kind of have to force myself to do that, but I know the benefits of it, and so that's why I'm willing to do it. And so that was, I was a little bit hesitant, but I'm like, you're right. So start taking classes, and I enjoyed it to a degree. I mean, it was a lot of work, of course, and I did it online through a seminary called Reformed Theological Seminary.
Okay.
So I was able to do it online, which was convenient, and continue to do my job at First Pres. And after a couple of years passed, which would brought us to the beginning of 2020, I was really challenged again by the new pastor now. So we had hired a new pastor back fall of 2019, and he said, well, you should probably really think about what the end goal is, and pray about what the next step is.
Had you had something in your mind?
I really, that's a good question. I had obviously thought about that, but I had just, and maybe I was resisting. Like maybe I kind of knew early on that probably what's going to happen is I'm going to go down the pastoral route. But I knew what that entailed. That is a huge that is just a big deal, a lot to bite off, a huge responsibility when you're in that role, what all that encompasses. And so I think kind of subconsciously I was resisting that. Like I'm just, every time someone would ask me, I was like, well, I'm just kind of getting my feet wet, trying to figure it out. Right. And I did that. I was doing that for a couple of years.
2 years, right.
Right. And so, but at the beginning of this year, the new pastor at First Pres kind of challenged me to pray about what God was calling me into and what would be, what you see the end goal being with seminary. And I really kind of devoted myself to praying, Gretchen and I praying about that and where God was leading us. And it just started to become very clear that, yes, indeed, pastoral ministry was kind of where he was leading me. And looking back over some experiences and like opportunities to preach a couple of times and enjoying that, and just affirmation from people. It just was, God was making it really clear. It's like, if you had a question about this before, Brock, this is, yes, indeed.
Well, let me just make a comment that it seems to me like a lot of people put that as the goal right out of the gate. And just the fact that you have been hesitant I think is a really good sign. You know, I think that's something that it's serious, and it's, it's not fame and glory, it's responsibility if you're doing it right.
That's right.
And so that's really cool. And I'm excited to see what's going to happen.
Yeah.
So, all right. So you're in, you're locked in.
Locked in.
So next step is.
Okay. So at that point, it became very clear, a lot of clarity around the calling into pastoral ministry. All right.
Including Gretchen.
Yeah, she was on board.
Yep.
I mean, you know how that.
Yeah.
Well, some of you know how that process goes.
Absolutely.
You might be a little bit of hesitation at first, but really, we have found out in our marriage, at least, that as we pray about things and earnestly seek God to bring us together with a like-mindedness about a decision, I mean, so often that's the case.
Yeah.
And so that happened here. We were starting to get kind of excited about that idea. Well, then, okay, well, now what?
Yeah.
Because that changes things a little bit. And back to my days in college, like I mentioned earlier, I was involved with a ministry there called Campus Outreach. That ministry was closely tied to the Presbyterian Church in America, PCA.
Okay.
So as I was growing just tremendously in my faith during that time and being challenged in many ways, I was attending a PCA church. Okay. So back to the present, I had said way back then that if I ever felt like I was going to pursue being a pastoral ministry, that I would do that in the PCA denomination. And that was just, a few different things went into that. Like I said, but coming up in the PCA church during that pivotal time in my life, in my Christian growth, but also just as I've studied and read, and theologically, that's where I align most.
Right.
So that entails some changes. First Pres is an eco church, not PCA. And so I started to search out opportunities in seminary to pursue PCA ordination. All right. Well, RTS certainly fulfills that. So you could continue with RTS online, or look around for some other opportunities, other seminaries that might just be a better fit for what I wanted to do. All right. And what I mean by that is typically what you find is when someone comes to that decision, like where I was in the stage of life I was, they would move, enroll full time.
That's what I thought you were going to tell me.
Seminary.
Yeah.
Enroll full time at the seminary and move their family, and knock it out in, of 2 to 3 years. And Gretchen and I just really have felt God planting us for this season in the Florence, and we actually live in Darlington, but are just highly involved and have been for 11 years in Florence and the community around Florence. And that was not, we just felt like that was a long process that God brought us through, and a bunch of prayer and praying through to bring us to where we are currently. And so having a sense of being settled a little bit, wanting to continue that, and one part of that being our kids and kind of keeping them stable and settled for a little while. All that came into play, and so we really didn't want to move. So what opportunities are there to do seminary online? Well, I'd been doing seminary online through RTS, but it would require at some point to move, go in person. Well, I came across a seminary called Lamp Seminary, which was designed almost specifically for the PCA denomination. So it meets all the requirements for PCA ordination for a pastor, and it's completely online. So no moving. And another huge benefit of that was the cost, and it is extremely cost effective.
I was gonna say, if there's no campus to
no campus,
maintain,
no overhead,
yeah.
all of that stuff, and like pre-recorded lectures. I won't go into all the details of how online seminary works, but you essentially listen to these professors' pre-recorded lectures, study a lot, read a lot, and then you're tested on that, write a paper, move on. That's kind of how it goes. And so for however they do it, it was very cost effective, which was a big deal for us.
Sure.
And so, but the one little catch was you have to have a local church or group of churches that are willing to be learning sites, what LAMP calls learning sites, which is an approved place that is going to institute their training and kind of monitor you, mentor / oversee you through the process. And so, of course, I wanted to do that in the PCA church to get experience in that denomination. And so I had a good friend here in town named Stacy Severance who had planted a church several years ago,
PCA.
Good Shepherd, PCA. And so we had been talking a little bit about, as this was starting to happen and unfold, would that be a possibility for them to be the learning site? And basically we would go over there and pursue LAMP Seminary. And as we talked and prayed and thought about it, it really became a plan started to fall into place. And so to make a little bit of a long story shorter, Gretchen and I are going to move over to Good Shepherd, going to pursue LAMP Seminary through Good Shepherd. They're going to be the learning site. I am going to be the director of youth and children for Good Shepherd on a part-time basis.
Right.
And so that's the pursuit and the calling and the where we are now pursuing seminary and ordination at the same time, kind of the way that works. In the PCA, probably take about 4 years to complete that whole thing. And so that's where we were. Now, there's another big piece over here, which is, well, how do we live? How do we pay bills and stuff? And what some people do in that case is obviously if they move to a school or enroll in grad school or seminary, student loans.
Yeah.
But we really wanted to avoid that if we could. And after kind of talking to people and a lot of people that are mentors to me, it became clear that we could raise support for those living expenses, much like a missionary.
Yeah.
And so we started exploring that idea. And I have to say, I've been very aware of how support raising works since college, because those people that were on staff with Campus Outreach, they had to raise their support.
Yeah.
And then my wife's parents, Mark and Linda Getty, they were on staff with Campus Crusade at the beginning of their marriage for, I want to say, I think it was like 11, 12 years or something. And so that was support raising.
Yeah.
And so I had this idea of what support raising was, and I'll say that I was not excited. I've never been excited about it. It is a tough, tough thing. And anybody that's done that knows just, to write people basically and asking them to support you in this endeavor, it's just a tough thing. I knew. So initially I was like, I can't believe I'm even considering this. Right. But then what was interesting is after praying about it and talking through it, just really seeking God's face about it, I started to become very excited about it and confident, like, well, this is stepping out in faith, obviously, but I haven't had a ton of opportunities. I mean, I have had opportunities to step out in faith, but this is going to be a significant stepping out of faith. And I just in that, I was kind of like excited about it, like the opportunity to step out in faith. But I was also just confident that God would provide what we needed. And so that became the plan as well. We were going to ask for support, make a list and send out support letters. And so we've done that some. We're currently still doing that and sending out letters. And then the last piece, which is and this is, I love talking about it now because it's all just opportunities for me to give glory to God for how He orchestrates these things in ways that we could never think of.
Right.
So I never would have thought I would be raising support, and here I am, and am confident in it. Confident in God's provision,
sure.
however that works
Right.
out. But so the other little piece was there was still maybe the potential to have another part-time job, because working for a Good Shepherd was going to be just maybe 10 to 15 hours a week.
Okay.
Seminary would be, I estimate, probably spending 12 to 15 hours a week on that. So I still had a chunk of time to potentially do something and make a little bit of money maybe and bridge that gap some of what we'd have to raise. And I'd been involved for a number of years with East Florence Mission. And if our listeners are familiar with that, is a mission started about, it's been 40 years now, by Frank and Peggy Key over in East Florence, and with the goal of reaching out to and helping kind of disadvantaged youth in that area, and just ministering to them, teaching them about the Bible, about Christ, the gospel, and meeting some of their basic needs, like providing a meal for them.
Yeah.
And so that had switched to, for a number of years, it was run by Peggy Key and her husband Frank, and then they passed it on to one of their children, Charlie Key. And so he had been running it. He is who I was involved with there, and had just really fallen in love with that ministry and the kids there. For the past couple of years, we'd been working with elementary age kids, grades kindergarten through 6th grade. And I would go every week, every Tuesday, and help with that, teach a Bible lesson for some of the kids, and help with the food and play games with them and stuff like that. And so just over those years had really developed a bond with those students. It's basically the same 30, 35 to 40 kids that come in every week, and just had really developed a bond and fallen in love with them and the ministry and what was going on there. And so had enjoyed that, was just kind of doing that as a volunteer. Well, a lot of interesting things happened in the past year there. And the most recent thing is that after a long struggle with pancreatic cancer, Charlie Key passed away a few weeks ago. And he was a godly man who loved Jesus. And so, though it's sad and certainly feel compassion for Marilyn, his wife, she has said to me, and we know where Charlie is, and and singing and dancing, and so that's that was a bittersweet kind of thing. But what it has led to is an opportunity to become the director of the East Florence Mission, and so there's talk going on about that, negotiation going on right now. So that's not a done deal.
Sounds like a big job to fit into your.
Yeah, I mean,
15,
it does sound like. But the thing is what makes it a possibility is the way it was functioning, especially for the past couple of years, is they would serve children on Tuesdays and Wednesdays, so twice a week. They would bring them in, bus them in after school, and feed them, have Bible study, play games, and would have them back home by 5 o'clock. So it was, about a 2-hour block of time.
Okay, yeah.
So the hope would be we could add a day, so 3 days a week, and we could do that same thing 3 days a week to start with. But then also think about, plan, create vision for what the future might look like for that ministry. And I think the sky's the limit on what could become, or what could come out of that ministry, and the number of kids to minister to, how to reach different areas off Florence with that. So, and especially, what's interesting in all of that is COVID, and the way the pandemic has worked and changed school. So, I mean, most everyone listening would probably know that the district public schools are going to an A/B schedule where, the kids aren't going every day.
Right.
And so I see great opportunity to for tutoring, homework help for those days when kids are out of school,
Right.
not on the schedule, or at least providing a place for them, some of these kids to go to have access to resources that would allow them to do the school. I mean, they still have to be engaged on those off days. Those I don't know what the terminology is, but the days that they don't have to go in person and are doing virtual, they have to be logged in, and from my understanding, they have to be logged in on a computer. And so maybe it's just at the very least providing some resources to do that with, but also being available to help. So there's all kind of dreaming and vision with that. So
that's exciting, man. Wow.
Yeah, it's a lot.
That's a lot going on.
Yeah.
And you seem pretty peaceful about it. So
I do. Well, it's been a process, which I'm thankful for. A great mentor of mine told me one time that when the process is right, when you have a good process, things it seems to be much more peaceful. God's gives you a peace in that, rather than making some hasty decisions, jumping into things. And I feel like that's what I've tried to do. We've tried to do is process, working through the process and praying through the process, and not being overly, anxious or jumping on something too quick. So, yeah, I'm feeling good about it. I mean, right now I feel great, and like I was telling you earlier, I'm kind of in between a lot of that stuff, so I've had some more free time than I've had in a while, and that's been good and enjoyable. And
but enjoy it while you can.
Enjoy it while I can. It will quickly come to an end.
Yeah. Well, cool, man. Well, all right. Well, so let's kind of land the plane a little bit here. The listeners, whoever's watching, how can they help you? How can they pray for you?
That's great. Thanks for asking that. That would be a huge blessing to us, our family, to just pray for us, pray for the Page family in this transition process, these new roles and responsibilities. Obviously, the kind of the big end goal for me and our family is that I would complete seminary, receive a MDiv, and be ordained as a pastor in the PCA church. But of course, that's not a given. And, have to put in the work, so to speak, for that. So I would appreciate prayer along those lines. But and prayer in the ministry we'll have at Good Shepherd, and ministry that we'll have, hopefully, if everything works out, at East Florence Mission. And also, if God lays it on anyone's heart that they would be interested in talking to us more about what that looks like, I would love to hear from you. That would be awesome. We're still looking for support and people to be on our support team, not just with prayer. Obviously, prayer, really, and I know this tends to be the cliche if anyone out there has experience with support raising.
Prayer's the most important.
Prayer's the most important thing, and that is absolutely true.
It's true, yeah.
Yes, and so first and foremost, prayer, but obviously there'll be some financial need there, and so we would love to, if that's, if God lays it on your heart, love to talk to you about it.
Well, we'll put all the information to get in touch with you that will accompany this video and this podcast. Awesome, man. All right. Well, the last thing I've been asking people, our guests here, is to just share a resource. You're a man on a mission. You're a man who's doing work. And so what is maybe a podcast or a book you're reading or something that maybe has impacted you that might be interesting to our viewers?
Well, a few things come to mind. First, from my experience in the youth world, this would be to parents of youth. There's a great resource out there. It's called Axis, AXIS.org.
Yeah.
Has unbelievable resources for parents. To access all those resources, I think you have to pay a little subscription, but it's not bad. And for what you get, it is just phenomenal. But they have basically parenting guides from a Christian biblical worldview on almost any subject you can think of that a current youth would deal with. It really is amazing. Some of it's very specific, and some of it's pretty general. But that would be one thing I would encourage. That has been, and I've only kind of reached the tip of the iceberg on that. I mean, I've just started getting into that, and it's been helpful to me. another parenting resource, one of my favorite authors in the world is Paul David Tripp. He has a book called Parenting. If you're looking for a resource to help you with godly Christian parenting, I would highly recommend that book. Now, it doesn't lay out a bunch of steps. It is more the philosophy behind the parenting, but it really convicted me, that book. So there'd be a couple of resources in that world. Outside of that, I don't know. There's so many books out there. I can tell you some of my favorite authors are R.C. Sproul, John Piper, Tim Keller. There's many. I like some of the older guys. Dr. Martin Lloyd-Jones is really good. Gretchen and I are trying to start reading a book by John Etheridge. Is that his name? Some of you might know that. So forgive me if I'm saying that wrong, but we're reading it together as a couple and kind of discussing it, and it's been good. We just started, so that's a good one as well. But you can never go wrong with, obviously, and I say this to myself. I'm always convicted about this, but spending more time in Scripture, and there's great helps out there with that. Just kind of commentaries and stuff that help. One of my favorite series, it's not really a commentary series, but it's a help as you read through books of the Bible. It's called Books of the Bible for You. And so it comes from the Good Book Company is who publishes it. But they'll take a book of the Bible and basically do almost like a commentary through that book of the Bible, but it's written by different authors. Each book is covered by a different author. And it's like they have Daniel for You. I'm currently reading Daniel for You.
Okay.
I've read James for you, Romans for you. And they are just great helps to kind of read along as you read books of the Bible. And there's, people like Tim Keller, Sam Alberry, David Helm is who I'm currently reading. He did the Daniel one. There's just top-notch guys that are writing those books, and I've just found it very helpful to read those.
For you. The For You series.
Yeah, For You series.
Excellent. Mm-hmm. Well, Brock Page, we're excited that you're a friend of Radio Free. We're excited that you're a member of this community. You know, this podcast is going to kind of put a point on community, and it's, I appreciate you sharing your story with us and your heart for community, because like you said, you're sticking around because you're a part of this community, and we are excited for people to do whatever God calls them to do, whether it's here or elsewhere. But we got a lot of love for the Florence community, and we're glad you're here, man. Yeah, well, we're glad to be here. We think Florence. And, I always have to say Darlington, too. We're in Darlington. Greater Florence area is a special place. I think there's, and I think there's a lot. God's doing a lot in our midst here, and it's going to continue to do a lot. So we're excited about it and look forward to all the things in store. So excellent. Well, thanks for being a part of the show today.
I appreciate it. Thanks, Kev.
Thanks again to Brock Page for sharing his story with us here at Faces of Florence. All of us in the Florence community can help Brock Page by praying for him and his family. And if you'd like to be a part of his support team, just send him an email to get all the details. That email address is brockpage81@gmail.com. We've included links with this video to help you learn more about Brock and the resources he mentioned. And be sure to tune in next week for a brand new episode of Faces of Florence. I'm Kevin Smith, and this has been a Radio Free production.